All right, let's talk about money. We use it every single day, right? But do you really know the rules? Because underneath every single swipe, tap, or transfer, there's this hidden legal world. And in the next few minutes, we're going to pull back the curtain on 5 legal truths that are absolutely going to change the way you think about your finances. So let's just dive right in. I want you to think about your bank account. What is it? You probably think it's kind of like a safety deposit box, a little vault for your cash, right? Well, legally speaking, that's not even close. And honestly, getting your head around this one single surprising fact is the key. It unlocks everything else we're about to talk about.
Okay, so here's our game plan. We're going to look at 5 real-world situations. First up, how a sale can accidentally turn into a loan. Then we'll uncover your bank's secret identity. We'll also get into the 3 different deals you make with every credit card swipe, how some contracts can just disappear, and finally, what you're owed when someone makes you wait for your money.
All right, section 1. Our first story starts with a pretty standard property deal that just went completely sideways. And it brings up a question that, on the surface, seems really simple. But the legal answer? Whoa. It reveals the super powerful financial idea that honestly affects every single one of us. So here's what went down. You've got a seller who just couldn't follow through on a property sale. The court steps in and says, okay, deal's off. You have to give the buyer their down payment back. Simple enough, right? Except they didn't. They just held on to the buyer's money long after they were ordered to return it. And that right there is where things get interesting. The buyer is thinking, hey, you've had my money this whole time. You've been using it. I should get interest on that. But the seller probably shot back with, hold on, this was never a loan. It was a down payment. Why on earth would I owe you interest? So, what do you think? Who's right here? The whole answer hinges on this one legal word, forbearance. I know it sounds a little fancy, but the idea behind it is actually super simple. It just means you have the right to get paid, but you're waiting. You're letting someone else hang on to your money for a bit longer. You're forbearing from collecting what's yours. So, what's the difference between a loan and this forbearance thing? Think of it like this. A loan is when you agree, right from the start, to let someone use your money. Forbearance is different. It's when you're forced to wait to get your money back. But here's the kicker. In both situations, someone else gets the benefit of using your cash. And the law is pretty clear. If someone's using your money, you deserve to be paid for it. And that is exactly how the Supreme Court saw it. They said, look, by not returning that down payment, the seller forced the buyer into a forbearance. The seller had the use of the buyer's money, so yep, they had to pay interest for that privilege. A failed sale literally morphed into a loan after the fact. Wild, right? Okay, so let's take that idea and run with it. This whole concept of use of money brings us right back to where we started, the bank. I mean, if a seller holding onto your down payment counts as a loan, what does that mean for the trillions of dollars we all collectively park in our bank accounts? Okay, brace yourself, because this is the big one. This comes straight from the courts. That contract you have with your bank, it is not a contract of deposit. It is, legally speaking, a contract of a simple loan. You heard that right. When you deposit money, you are legally lending it to the bank. The roles are totally flipped. You become the creditor, and the bank becomes the debtor. They owe you money. And because you've lent it to them, they can now use it, which is the whole reason they can lend it out to other people. So why does this even matter? Well, because they are borrowing money from all of us. The law holds banks to this incredibly high standard. It's called a fiduciary duty. It basically means they have to operate with high standards of integrity and performance. They can't be careless with your, or rather their money, which they borrowed from you. And you can see this in action in a really interesting case involving stolen checks. The court found one bank was 60% to blame because their teller failed to meet that high standard. They didn't properly verify who was cashing the check. But, and this is key, the other bank involved, the depositor, was found 40% responsible. Why? Because they were negligent too. They hadn't been keeping a close eye on their own accounts. It shows that this duty of care, it's a two-way street. All right, let's keep going. This web of who owes who gets even more tangled when you pull out a credit card. You just swipe or tap, and it feels like one single, simple transaction. But legally, oh no. You've just kicked off a chain reaction involving 3 totally separate deals. So, check this out. A guy buys airline tickets, but he has a huge dispute with the airline. He's furious. So to protest, he just stops paying his credit card bill. His logic is, hey, the airline didn't deliver, so I'm not paying. Makes sense, right? Well, the bank then suspends his card. So was the bank out of line? The law says absolutely not. And it's all because of something called the three contracts rule. See, that one little swipe actually creates three distinct legal agreements. One, the sale itself, that's between you and the store. Two, the loan, that's between you and your bank. And three, the promise to pay, that's between the bank and the store. And here is the absolute most important part. The courts have said these three contracts are totally independent of each other. That means your beef with the airline, that's contract number one, has zero legal bearing on your duty to pay the bank, which is contract number two. So your dispute with the merchant doesn't give you the right to stop paying your bank. They are two separate fights.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about how these financial promises get made, but how do they end? It's not always with a lawsuit or some dramatic breach. Sometimes a deal just dies because both people agree to just walk away.
So get this, a company gets a loan approved from a bank. The contract is signed, sealed, delivered, it's official. But then, there's a problem. The company can't meet one of the key conditions. So they go to the bank and say, hey, can we just cancel this whole thing? And the bank says, sure.
This brings us to a really cool legal idea called mutual desistance. And it's just pure logic. If two people can mutually agree to create a contract, it only makes sense that they can also mutually agree to destroy it. It's like both parties hitting the undo button at the same time.
Well, years later, the company tried to sue the bank for damages over that old loan deal. And the court's answer was basically no way. By mutually agreeing to cancel the deal, both parties had effectively ripped up the contract. The deal was dead, and you can't sue over a deal that doesn't exist anymore.
And that brings us right back to where we started. Whether we're talking about forbearance or bank loans or credit cards, there's one common thread, right? It's all about being compensated for the use or the delay of money. We usually just call it interest. But what are the actual hard and fast rules for when you're allowed to charge it?
Well, the law is super specific on this. For interest to be legit, three things have to be true. One, it has to be spelled out explicitly. No assumptions. Two, it has to be in writing. A verbal agreement won't cut it. And three, the rate has to be lawful. You can't just charge 1,000,000% interest. It can't be completely outrageous.
So let's wrap up with this final thought. Now that you know all this, that your bank account is actually a loan to the bank, that delays in payment can legally turn into interest-bearing situations, that a single credit card swipe creates a whole web of contracts, how does that change things for you? The next time you look at your bank statement, are you going to see yourself as just a customer? Or are you going to see yourself for what you legally are, a creditor?